Hello friends and potential friends. Well, today is Sunday, February 28th, 2021, and I almost missed doing a February garden tour. I'm sure there's still some of my friends up north that could use a bit of a green fix, so I better get this done before it gets too hot out here. Start out here with the green stalk. As you can see, I kind of rebuilt this thing a week ago. Harvested all the sage, nasturtiums, and the thyme. Trimmed back the mint quite a bit, but I decided to leave it in the bottom tray. And then I planted a few radishes. Each of these three tiers has got radishes. We've got, I believe those are daikon radishes in the bottom tier. Then we have some French breakfast radishes. And then in the top tier here, we've got some watermelon radishes. And as you can see, I got some pretty good germination in the last week. Now I've got one more layer I can put on top of this, and my plan for that is I'm going to pick out one of the varieties of peppers that I'm growing this year and put some of them out here. That way any seeds that I get should be clean, not be crossed with anything else, because that'll be the only peppers I have out here. And incidentally, the datil peppers that I had in here over the winter, I transplanted those, and I'll show them to you in just a moment. Okay, let's try this again. The battery just died in my handy cam. Before we get back to the peppers in the backyard, I figured I'd stop and look at the papayas along the side of the house. As you can see, they're not looking all that great. My papayas were the only plants I had that actually took a hit the one night that we got down close to freezing. We actually hit 33 degrees one night. I think it was Groundhog Day, February 2nd. And that's the closest we got to a freeze this winter. But peppers are still the papayas are still hanging in there. I still have my cute little papaya. Give you an idea how big it is. About the size of a tennis ball, but it's still hanging in there, and that's my first papaya that I've ever grown in this property. Now for my container plants, still have my pineapple plantation growing strong, and that Mexican avocado in the front got through the winter okay as well. You see there's another papaya in the background there, along with rosemary that's been kind of neglected. I need to put that with the rest of the rosemary. Over on this side, we've got several Ponderosa lemons still in pots. Another papaya. There's a loquat in the background there, and I see some mint down in the hiding underneath everything. The horseradish has not come up yet, but it will. And then there's the mulberry. In the last week, this mulberry has put on all these leaves. A week ago it was just the sticks. Not only that, it's trying to grow berries all over the place. That guy needs to go in the ground. My elderberry is still growing strong. A little bit more mint up here on the barrel. And I think these pots over here are some rosemary, or some ginger that I forgot to harvest last year, or last month actually. Over in the experimental bed, the aloes are doing good. I see another flower stalk coming up on this one closest to me. And a couple of the old flower stalks that have already died off. And incidentally, apparently down here, aloe is kind of invasive, because the ones you see over here to the left, those grew there by themselves. I planted these ones a few years ago, and now they're spreading out trying to take over this whole bed. I do have a lot of sweet potato slips coming on. Let them get a little bit bigger and establish some roots, and then I'll have to figure out what I'm going to do with them. Now the 6 datil peppers that I mentioned that I had out in the green stalk over the winter, I planted them in here along one side of this bed. And I do see a few blooms coming on, so they'll probably still be producing more peppers this year. And just to make things a little more interesting, the dozen sprouts that I had in the lab the last time I did an update, I've moved out here as well. Now this year I'm going to be just growing these for the peppers. I've got a good supply of seeds out of the green stalk last winter, and so now I just want to get some peppers and see if I can duplicate the datil hot sauce that was so famous up in St. Augustine for years and years. Still have a little bit of this purple cabbage. Hasn't tried to form any heads or anything. I have put some of that in my salads over the winter. Over in the main beds, rosemary is still growing like gangbusters. I love that stuff. Collards, I've been picking collards all winter. 3 or 4 pickings, I believe, so far, along with the mustard. And I have probably 7 or 8 large freezer bags full of collards and mustard in the freezer right now. But I did notice one of the mustards, apparently is already thinking about going to seed. So the mustards may not be here for much longer. I'm not sure how the Vates collards are going to do. Looks like I need to pick some more of those, but we'll see how they handle the heat. Cabbage collards are they just keep growing and growing and growing. I like those things. They're good to munch on just fresh out of the garden. Go good in salads, and they're going to be pretty good when I put them in jars here pretty soon. And speaking of putting things in jars, I did a video on canning collards almost 3 years ago, I think. But I've learned a few things since then, and I'm considering redoing that video. Because for one thing, I've learned that along with collards and mustard and turnip greens and radish greens, you can also can kale and Swiss chard. And I've got a bunch of both of them to deal with. That Swiss chard's going to add some nice colors to the jars. It's all starting to droop right now because it's about 11:30 in the morning, and we're already getting up near 80 degrees. So I think we're supposed to top out around 83 or 84 today. The lettuce, I've noticed some of the lettuce is starting to get a little bit bitter, so I may not be getting my salads for much longer, but I have been eating them all winter, and so far it's still looking good. That one's still good. My cabbage is growing good. All of them are forming heads. This particular one is solid and about the size of a softball. That one's pretty solid too. In fact, it looks like they're all getting pretty solid. Cilantro is starting to grow faster, but when it gets warmer, it probably won't be there for much longer. This is the biggest one, and that's going to be a nice head. Thinking about trying to make some sauerkraut. Incidentally, you can also turn kale and Swiss chard, as well as cabbage or collards, into sauerkraut. Now over here on the tomato bed, the tomatoes made it through the winter. I've been coming out here pollinating them, and now I'm starting to see some pollinators showing up. I saw my first honeybee the other day. And I have tomatoes. Most of them are still green. Some of them are starting to turn. Got a lot of little ones here and there and everywhere. Still have more blossoms. But if the lettuce will hold out, I should have some tomatoes to put in my salads before too long. In fact, something I've been waiting to show off a little bit. Uh-oh. 2 of those are missing. Ah, there they are. I've got my first ripe tomatoes. I've been waiting on that little guy. Apparently these 2 fell off overnight. But they're still going to be edible. In fact, that little guy is not going to make it in the house. Oh, excuse me a moment. I'm going to enjoy this. Nothing like the first fresh tomato of the year. Oh, that's good. Tomatoes are doing pretty good. Let's go see what the mini orchard's looking like. Okay, out in the mini orchard, I don't know whether you can see this or not, but The blueberry is starting to bud out. That'll be putting on leaves pretty quick. And over here, that moringa tree that I chopped the top off of last year is putting on new growth. So I'll be getting some more moringa this year. I got in here and cleaned out all the trash out of the sugarcane bed. And I do have a few new ones coming up. But I really need to cut off these big ones and get them planted in the ground so I can keep that going. Ponderosa Lemon, still doing good. Looks like it's got a little bit of new growth coming on. Oh, still no bees in my yard art. Oh well, I keep hoping. But my fig tree over there, that's putting on leaves again. And I need to give it some special attention, see if I can get it to grow a little bit bigger. It's had a hard life. And then my other papayas, no fruit yet, but they're recovering nicely from that one cold night. Grocery store lemon is still growing pretty good. And I believe, yep, the little papayas that my friend planted, hope you can see them in there. They're still kind of tiny, but they're still growing also. So they made it through the winter. Incidentally, there's why they call this place Florida. Flowers all over the place. The loquat that I planted out here a year or two ago, it's about 5 feet tall now, and a lot of new growth at the top. And then finally, my Ponderosa Lemon still has one lemon on it. The other one fell off the other day, and I took it in the house and turned it into juice. But if you look closely, you can see there's blossoms starting up all over the place. In fact, there's one branch back here. It's really got a bunch of blossoms coming out. So looks like it's going to try to produce some more lemons for me again this year. My Florida avocado, about 3 feet tall, growing strong, has plenty of new growth at the top, and the gardenia is still hanging in there and growing pretty good. And there is one more moringa right over here. I'm not sure about that being a good place for it, but it's starting to put on some new growth there at the top, so hopefully that one will continue to grow. And I'm not going to go in the lab this time, but suffice it to say, I've got a bunch of pepper seedlings in there in yogurt cups, and I don't really know where most of them are going to go. What I'm probably going to have to do is get this area cleaned up and start putting a lot of this year's spring plants into containers and grow them in containers, because my raised beds are pretty much filled up, and it looks like it's going to be a while before I can pull any of that stuff up, especially the collards and probably the Swiss chard and the kale as well. They just keep on growing. So I'll be putting a bunch of containers out here before too long. Do have one more pineapple I've got to bring out here. And then we'll see where we go from there. It's going to be an interesting year. I'm kind of going crazy with peppers this year. And I have a few more tomato varieties that I want to get started pretty soon too. But I'll be doing a lot of container growing this year, unless I build some more raised beds somewhere. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to go inside and fix myself a little salad for breakfast with a tomato added to it. And I'll see you on the next video.